Modern psychology and mainstream therapy talk about buzzwords like depression and anxiety, but at the core root of these issues lies sadness. It's very obvious for all of us to look at these issues and say, yes, a person is and would have been profoundly sad for them to get to a stage of depression and anxiety. However, majority of us do not look at sadness or sit with it or try to manage it or alleviate it when it does arise in microdoses in our day-to-day life. In this video, I will give you some signs that you can spot sadness hidden in plain sight in your conscious words and actions, in your thoughts and emotions subconsciously, or in your motivations and intentions unconsciously. It is important to talk about happiness first, and I'm going to give you a glimpse of a happy person, but as an adult. It's very easy to imagine a happy baby or a happy child or a happy cartoon character. But when we imagine a happy person who is also an adult, sometimes we're thrown into a conflict. Why is that? It's because in the day-to-day life, if we meet somebody who is genuinely happy and free and coming from a place of no expectations and living life just for the experience of it, most often than not, we can categorize them as dorky or corny or even whimsical. We don't do it consciously, of course, because, we are good people. But when we look at these people who are extremely happy and sort of unhinged, they tend to be the people who have the liberty to stop and smell the roses, who eat every bite as if it's the first bite of the food. These are the people who can dance in the rain without having any worry as to how they are appearing or how others are projecting on them. These are usually the people who have either stumbled upon happiness after something has happened into their life and they have unconsciously integrated that state into their life, or these are master practitioners of shadow work. When you live life from a perspective of a shadow work disciple, it becomes your life commitment. Usually after a dark night of soul, shadow work in itself helps you integrate majority of your persona and your shadow, so you reach a surface level layer where you can touch upon the state of being a fool. The more you go into it, the more free you appear and the more you can live your life like a fool. Once you go into this experience of acting like a fool in your own life, you tend to look very liberated on the forefront. Others can look at you and assume that you either have a very slippery skin that nothing really gets to you, or you get elevated effortlessly, or you don't have a care in the world. But in reality, the truth is far from it. Usually people like these have a faster recovery time. They process their emotions because everybody has an emotional body, everybody processes emotions, everybody feels emotions. However, they process it at a much faster rate because their subconscious and unconscious and conscious is much more integrated because of the practice of shadow work. The freedom in a real happy person looks like a lack of any preconceived notion before they go into an experience. When we are born onto this planet, we are born whole. We are born directly from source. So we are born as completely feeling emotional beings. In the concept of masculine and feminine, I tend to believe that our parents provide us and protect us, and hence they act as the masculine shelter for the life source, which is the feminine aspect coming from God. Because we develop mental facilities later on in life, we tend to be only emotional beings. And there's a lot of literature in psychiatry, as well as psychology, as well as other esoteric and spiritual researches that states that babies up until the 6 months old are basically emotional sponges. And it's only after 6 months and 1 year of their age that they tend to develop any concept of thought. When we are born, we obviously inherit a lot of trauma, a lot of values, a lot of should and shouldn'ts from our parents, from our community, from our society, from our environment and surroundings, etc. And what that does is that actually fragments us from a whole state of being to a fragmented consciousness. The more we fragment, the more we self-abandon and separate from our core essence. Obviously, fragmentation happens when we are faced with shame. And shame is a byproduct of self-abandonment arising from an experience which is inherently painful. Because our parents try to socialize us to make us fit into the human society. And human society, collective as a whole, is not really conducive to a fool's lifestyle. We tend to become more and more separated from ourselves, from our core truth, from our core desires, from our core needs as the life progresses. And this becomes the actual root cause of unhappiness. As we grow old from this state of being, we tend to accumulate more and more experiences, and we tend to suppress the sadness that becomes more and more unconscious. Our ego obviously does not like to accept that we are unhappy, because in essence, our ego's job is to make us believe that we are inherently perfect, we are inherently good, and we are inherently always right. As ego calcifies on a chronically unhappy emotional body, it can over time make us very miserable, even in a perceivably super successful life. And obviously, down the line, it can also make us a match to a lot of entity attachments. If you ever want to explore what are the signs that you are chronically unhappy, I'd suggest to start from these. The first sign is, how exactly do you feel when you get up in the morning? Typically, if you are chronically unhappy, you're going to feel like you don't want to do the day. You might feel like you're very groggy, you might feel like you're dreadful, you might feel like you want to go back to sleep, or you might feel like you don't want to do the day. I'm not talking about the days when you are going through something specifically stressful in your life, or you are going through a trauma, or you literally had a very rough night and you've just woken up. I'm talking about a trend or a pattern in your life. If you tend to always wake up groggy, if you tend to always wake up like you don't want to do the day, or if you tend to always wake up like life is so much stressful and there's so much pressure on you, that is unhappiness. But our ego is smarter. So most of us do not really tend to sit with 5 minutes of unhappiness in the morning. What do we do instead? We reach for our phones. The next time you wake up, try this. Spend 5 minutes sitting on your bed and really feeling your emotional body. Really feel the somatic sensations into your body and allow your emotional and your physical body and your psychological body to tell you what is it that you are actually feeling. Because you've just woken up, it's very difficult for your body to have external amplifications or thought forms to interact with your body and your emotional body or your sensory fields. So the actual state that you're going to feel right after you've woken up is your actual core state of being. Next sign is heavy projection. Projection is a way of interacting with our reality from a perspective of an overlay of how our ego wants us to justify ourselves. When we project on other people from an unhealed ego of an unconscious chronic unhappiness, which does not want to feel like we're unhappy, when we look at a person who's genuinely happy, genuinely free, genuinely liberated and exhilarated, we tend to condemn them in our mind. We might interact with them in a condescending way. We might look at them as if they've not seen life, or they're inherently foolish. When you catch yourself doing that, ask yourself, what objective data do you have about that person's life to actually make that kind of judgment? The next step is extreme comparison. Secure people, when somebody comes to them and shares a piece of their day, let's say something good or bad that has happened in their life, assume that it is entirely that person's experience. So when secure people interact with another person who's sharing a life piece with them, they tend to detach from themselves and enter into the perspective of the other person and feel good for them or feel bad for them. We call it empathy. However, if you are chronically unhappy, what will happen in that state is that your mind will remind you of a similar thing that's happening in your life. You will entirely be detached from that person sharing their perspective and their life experience with you. At the same time, you will be pushed to share your experience. For example, if somebody comes to you and tells you that they have just gotten late to work because of X, Y, and Z reason, you might not feel happy or sad or any what kind of way for them, but you might actually come up with your own version and might have this impulse to tell them how your day or commute was in the morning. In my opinion, extreme comparison is actually gossiping with your own self. If you are extremely comparing yourself to other people day and night, you better be sure that you're envious. You're not really envious of something that they have. You're actually envious because you're wanting to covet their happiness. The next sign is extreme control. Most people believe that controlling issues arise from narcissism or extreme pride. In my opinion, control is actually a way to try and make other people do or perceive what you are inherently unsuccessful in making you do it because of your own ego. Why is that? Because humanity is in itself a very self-centered species. We do not like to spend energy, time, money, and resources on other people unless it's something beneficial for us. And it's to say that if you are trying to control other people's actions, if you're giving them unsolicited advice, or better yet, if unconsciously you believe that you know better than them, or if you're trying to control their perception of you, what you're trying to actually do is you're trying to control a part of you that you cannot see and that you want to manage. Because you feel so powerless internally, you try to unconsciously exert that power externally in order to control your external circumstances. If you do that, your life is inherently very self-deficient and you're living a very miserable life. The problem is when we start living like this and when we get used to accepting control mechanisms as our defense mechanisms or our coping mechanisms, we tend to stop self-reflecting. And this in turn can add more to our chronic unhappiness because it is very rarely that you can actually control other people or anything in your life really. The goal of this video is for you to check yourself if and when you're doing these things and catch yourself in the moment. Because our ego, if we do not check it or confront it or look at it, does not allow us to feel or recognize that we're actually unhappy. You can be living a picture-perfect life on paper, and yet you could be miserable, starving in isolation and feeling completely detached from humanity and feel like an alien on earth. Why is that? Because we are connecting species. Our core need as humans is connection. And connection cannot happen until we're actually happy ourselves. Because if we are unhappy, our ego tries to push other people away. Everyone's definition of happiness, the way they feel happy, how much they feel happy, is different. It's a very individual process. And my belief is that every one of us should actually take it as a personal form of commitment towards our own selves to be happy. It's like going back in time only to meet with yourself. It's entirely your choice if you want to ever find happiness in yourself again, not the kind where you have to prove yourself or earn it via achievements or circumstances or dreams and goals, but the genuine organic kind that makes you sit, look at your tea and enjoy it. Or you can choose to live based on the rules that are laid down 20,000 millennia ago by society, community, family systems, etc. Life is a dance of closeness and distance, longing and fear, rhythm and misstep. Sometimes we step on each other's toes while learning the music of being human, and other times we trip on ourselves. But if you so much allow yourself to stop standing at the edge of life and move with it, I promise you that life will become better and feel more alive with every moment.